Good morning and welcome to Behind the Screen. I am JM, and this is a show where we sit around and we talk about games, board games, role-playing games, card games, miniature games. Can't wait to talk about Conquest. That's a video that's coming end of August, beginning of September. But more importantly, we talk about beautiful games and games that inspire beauty in our lives, things that elevate our sense of empathy and our love of our fellow man and bring us together around a table to share and participate in the human experience. And I know I talk a lot about that at the start of every episode. In fact, my buddy Josh, who used to do the grand campaign with me, was like, "Why do you keep bringing this up?" And I was like, this is a good thing to bring up because this is our 200th Behind the Screen. So first of all, let me say hello to Savage Goose. Heck yeah, good to see you, buddy. To Padre and to Tink, always good to see all of you. So this is going to be a kind of a discussion about beauty and why I keep bringing it up every episode. I'll look back over the last 200 episodes of Behind the Screen, and my son suggested I do a, hey, where am I going from here? And I figured that was a great advice from a kid who just started 7th grade. Not prepared to talk about that this morning. So when I started this, I just had the idea of, hey, I was going to do little short 15-minute videos twice a week to kind of engage with the patrons and the fans of Iconic. Everything from behind the screen looks at how I plot and run my games, how I write adventures. I'm currently writing a Savage Worlds adventure that I'm really excited about. Can't show that one off, but that was kind of the idea. In fact, that's where Vendom got its initial life. But then something changed. I wrote an article for a book called The Golden Key, Recovering Sacramental Imagination. And that book's coming out from Symbolic World Press later this year. As soon as it does, I will let everyone know. And it caused me to sit and really think about role-playing games. I had done a lot of research into the history of the hobby. It's where Beyond the Table came from. I was involved in a lot of different companies, working for Ulysses and Strange Owl and Pinnacle and now Palladium and some other ones. And I had just, kind of been ruminating on this idea that's brought up in Dostoevsky's book, The Idiot, that beauty will save the world. And I did an episode on that kind of encapsulated why I think RPGs are something beautiful. If you want to go back and look at episode 100, if Tink will help me remember, I'll put a card somewhere here so that you can follow back to that episode. And this is going to be an expansion on that because since episode 100, I've tried to narrow down and focus in on this. What is beautiful? In fact, I'm going against one of my previous statements where I said, listen, I want to support non-super mainstream games on this channel because of how beautiful it was. I'm actually going to review a 5th edition D&D product on Thursday because of its beauty. So what do I mean by, what maybe did Dostoevsky mean by beauty will save the world? Well, I can't imagine to attempt to speak to Dostoevsky's one book, let alone his works or his thoughts, in a single 15-minute episode. But I'm going to try and explain why I think role-playing games can be beautiful. So in the ancient world, we used to hold that 3 things were essentially ontologically real. And the fact that you could appeal to them as the best things in life. And they were objective. They were not subjective, which means they exist outside of us. They were not things that we filtered through ourselves. And that was truth, goodness, and beauty. And these 3 things form a plane of existence, a plane of relationships that, placed within ourselves, we are able to interact and be human. Truth being kind of objective reality. Goodness, the ability to treat each other's, at least not in the way we don't want to be treated, right? That was kind of the baseline. Don't do anything else to somebody that you wouldn't want them, negatively doing to you. That's kind of the big switch between the ancient Greek philosophers and when Christ comes along. And instead of saying, don't do anything to somebody else that you wouldn't want them to do to you, sort of our bare minimum for interacting with each other. It's also why when people say, but I'm such a nice guy, like, congratulations. It's literally the bare minimum for going out into society. He kind of elevates it and says, hey, right, treat other people the very way you would want them to treat you. And then beauty. Beauty as this aesthetic thing that provokes emotions and responses and calls to us and says, hey, this is sublime. You should feel humble, inspired, creative, active, at peace, energized. All of these things are what beauty provokes in us. Hey, Happy Face Haley. Speaking of beauty, we're going to be playing one of the most beautiful role-playing games tonight with Tink and Happy Face Haley, Shadows of Estrin. Just, my God, if you need a beautiful horror game, and I do mean that beautiful horror game, check out Shadows of Estrin. Ben, a lot of these conversation comes from my conversations with Ben. So Ben, I had to make sure you were here for this. John Doom, good to see you, bud. So we get this breakdown of this plane, right? 3 points determine a plane, or a point in a line, I guess, if you want to be pedantic about it. 3 points can make a stool that you can sit on, creates stability. But 2 points are only a line, or a segment, if you will. And at some point in the Enlightenment, in post-Enlightenment, we decided that beauty was subjective. That beauty was in the eye of the beholder, which is not actually what was being said in that quote if you take it in context. And so instead of this triad, we have been left with a dyad, which is a line. And the problem with having only 2 points is you tend towards extremism. Not going to get into the discussion of truth and goodness as being pulled further and further apart. I want to focus on putting beauty back in the center where it draws everything back into alignment. So, JM, what do these 3 things have to do with role-playing games? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because I think there's a fairly good analogy, and we touched on this in the Grand Campaign at one point, that if truth, objective reality, is essentially your rule book in isolation, rules as written, this idealized, ontological, purest version of the way the game could be played. And goodness, your interaction with your fellow man, are the people that you're going to sit around and play this game with. Then obviously, beauty is what evolves when those 2 things interact. It's what inspires us. It's what's caused us to laugh, to cry, to get angry at the table, to sit in hushed silence when an NPC kills a small puppy that your characters have fallen in love with. And suddenly, the whole table goes cold, wants this old woman who's actually a dragon in disguise dead. These are the beautiful moments. These are the moments that inspire us, that revitalize us, that cause us to come back to the table. These are, I think I've shared this story, when people ask me what's the difference between a board game and a role-playing game, is I'm like, well, you may learn a board game rules and you may enjoy playing Puerto Rico or Risk or God's War. But you're never going to, you might remember that one game where you snatched victory out of defeat. You rolled 666s or 666s while defending Kamchatka and wiped out your opponent's army. But role-playing games create a beautiful moment that is only real to the people around the table. And by real, I mean that is a memory. That is a memory that is as real as our other memories. As Haley said, she's still not over that. She's still not over the death of this imaginary puppy by this imaginary dragon. And it is a real moment in our lives. Unlike anything else. I can talk with Ben for hours about Elden Ring and how beautiful it is and how we build our builds. Did you discover this? What's our plots and theories? But it's still only really my experience. We can enjoy television shows where we passively sit back and love what we read or watch or consume. And there's a little bit of camaraderie there. Oh, did you see this episode? Hey, have you listened to this album? Have you read The Black-Tongued Thief? Little aside, if you haven't read The Black-Tongued Thief, go out and read The Black-Tongued Thief. It's amazingly irreverent and funny. Wonderful writing by Chris Bullman. Just wonderful. But it's not the same. It's not the same as this transformative, emotional, visceral reality that we get with role-playing games. Now, Dostoevsky said beauty will save the world. And, it's from The Idiot, which is really about human nature. But there's a lot of ways to take this. As Savage Goose pointed out, Shadow Dark is an aesthetically beautiful book. Historica Arcanum, which I'm going to review on Thursday, is aesthetically beautiful. It transcends the sum of its parts to create an emotional response in us. Now, Tink and I have argued about contemporary and modern art versus classical or natural art. And I'm beginning to see her point. But there's something about something truly aesthetically beautiful that leaves us in awe. Makes us want to step back. And we find ourselves a little bit changed. But there's more to that. If it was just about aesthetical pleasure, how does that save the world? Well, another view of the beauty will save the world is that beauty serves as a catalyst for our own transformation. That seeing beautiful things, that participating in beautiful things, yes, like role-playing games, elevates ourselves. We get to see morality played out in a very, sometimes very black and white way, which is what D&D is good at. That's what alignment is for. It is a heroic narrative on par with Joseph Campbell's heroic journey, Star Wars, the ancient myths. These things can change us. We can fight our demons in a very different way, right? It's like, oh, my brain's gonna die. Came before Lewis and Tolkien inspired them. Benno pointed out the idea that fairy tales are important, not because they tell us dragons exist. We all know dragons exist. They tell us that dragons can be beaten. That's the beauty of role-playing games. They tell us. Chesterton. That's what it is. Thank you. G.K. Chesterton, Ben. I knew you would be up on this. That's the beauty of role-playing games, is moral transformation. Now, I'm not suggesting that role-playing games are therapy. They're not. Your DM is not a trained professional. And if you need help, speaking as somebody who needs help and has been to therapy, go out and seek it. My friend Lily, who played in a ton of our streaming games, said, really, therapy should be like going to the dentist. You should do it once or twice a year, and nobody should nobody should blink at it for your checkup. And if something's wrong, that's when you schedule, a little bit more deep dive. Mr. Blaze, good to see you. Yes, mathematicians have argued that their math is too beautiful not to be true. So I'm not suggesting role-playing games is therapy, and I really think anyone who is putting a loaded gun into the hands of a child. I am not wise enough or trained enough or skilled enough, and I don't think the average dungeon master is to actually be a therapist. However, beauty can uplift us. Beauty can point out darkness in our lives and give us hope. I mean, that's literally the whole point of the Dungeons and Dragons episode of Community. It's how D&D brought a group of people together and saved one person's life with a D&D game. But still, right, they are. All right, Padre's correct. Your dungeon master could actually be a therapist. But D&D should not be used, especially if your dungeon master is a therapist. Give them a break. Just show up and participate and kill orcs or something. The last thing is beauty is redemptive. And this I think we see every time we play Dungeons and Dragons or Jackals or whatever game we're playing. We talked a lot about in episode 100 the idea of escapism, right? Not the fleeing of a coward from the battlefield, but as Tolkien said, the prisoner looking through the window, longing for something better and imagining it. Beauty says, hey, if these things are not just the sum of their parts, but have been elevated and redeemed into something more, then I'm not the sum of my parts. And I can be beautiful, and I can be redeemed. Whatever redemption means to you, right? Obviously, I'm coming from a very traditional Christian kind of view on this thing. But that shouldn't shut you out to the idea that role-playing games are redemptive. Look at the most popular D&D game online, which, let's be clear, Critical Role Season 1 still holds a very special place in my heart. That group is a bunch of horrible people and misfits. They're characters, not the people, right? Their characters are a bunch of horrible misfits. Some would say with very little redeeming value at the start. And what is the main plot that we play through time after time? We see this in Critical Role Season 1. What's the goal of every D&D group? What's the goal of our RuneQuest campaigns? What's the goal of our Jackals games? Quite literally to save the world. So in this case, your gaming group, your player characters, they are beauty in their gaming world. They are literally there to save the world. Yes, Ben. Beauty is its own reward. Just like sitting around and playing games with our friends is our own reward. So, I realize I try to keep it once every 100 episodes for a really highbrow discussion of beauty, kind of what I'm working through. But I think over this next 100 episodes, we're going to talk a lot more about that as it comes up. I'd like to do more campaign clinics. I'd like to do less just product reviews, he said, talking about Historica Arcanum. This game deserves some love, and so I will be showing that off. We're also going to do something fun. So I got a lot of Riffs books at Gen Con, like a lot of Riffs books. Getting back into my love of this thing that for so much of my life defined role-playing games to me. And there's this great little article buried in the middle of the Riffs GM's guide that I'm going to expand on and talk about, called The 7 Deadly Sins of Gaming. And what a great article. and I feel like we should talk about that. So that'll be our Tuesday discussion. And yeah, so for everyone who has just joined us for tonight or for this morning, or if today is your first episode or you've been following along for years now, first of all, a heartfelt thanks. BTS is an anchor point in my week. It helps keep me grounded. It helps keep me focused. And I've missed it these last 3 weeks between COVID and conventions and travel. Really glad to be back at it. Also, I'm going to point out that if you are at all interested, we have our patronage, and most of those rewards are now being duplicated over on YouTube. You're welcome to. We opened up membership on YouTube. I don't feel like I can talk about beauty twice a week and turn ads on my channel. I feel like, at least personally, I don't care if you do that, just personally, that would be very hypocritical of me. So I'm not going to use ads on YouTube. But if you want to support the channel, please take a look at the membership levels on YouTube, or jump over to patreon.com/iconicproduction. Even this shilling feels weird to me, but I've been told by my marketing person that I need to do that more. So here we are. So that's it. Beauty and gaming. Soon, that book that I keep referencing that article to will come out. And when it does, I'll share it. And hopefully, you guys, if you're interested, will enjoy it. It does have another article by, yes, I was just going to mention that. Ben wrote an article about superheroes as the saints, like American hagiography, essentially, like that superheroes have taken the place of saints in Western American culture. He and I have been talking about that for years, and that article slaps. I think is that the correct modern parlance. You're asking the wrong guy if you think I know the answer to this. I'm about to get ready to teach Latin because that's where my brain is at. So, Padre, I have missed it too. I've missed chatting with all of you guys. I'm always glad to see you all in the chat or on our Discord server. The play-by-post seems to be going well, so I'm really enjoying that. And starting in September, we're going to try a West Marches style riffs campaign set in the old like Texas, Arizona, New Mexico area of what is the old American states. So if you're interested in that at all and you are a member of the Iconic Patronage, just know that I'm going to start getting that set up. And the idea is that's what we'll do Thursday for next week. We'll talk about how I'm setting up the Riffs West Marches game. So that brings us to an end of this Behind the Screen. Thank you all to everyone who supports the channel, whether that's on the Patreon or showing up on here every week, chatting with me on Discord. I greatly appreciate all of you. Yes, Ben, Roger Scruton's A Very Brief Introduction to Beauty is like $10 on Amazon. It's really small and it is spectacular. If you are at all interested in this topic that I bring up over and over again, that is a great entry point. So, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming. I'm JM. This has been Behind the Screen, and I will see you all on Thursday. Till next time, have a good one.